time kind of promote, all the teaching that we do. So as you can tell from the screen, Passive Cash Flow for Life, that's a class that Nichole has been teaching for 10 or 11 years. And about 3 years ago, we actually took it online because there was so much material. Even over a 4-day class, Nichole still couldn't get all the material she wanted. So now it's 60 hours online. And the nice thing about it is that if you watch a video on due diligence and then you go and find a building 2 months later, you can always go back and look at the due diligence recording. As opposed to me, I had no joke, it was like I couldn't even get my fingers that far apart, a manual that big, and I had to go back and flip through it, and I still have my manual, by the way. But so it was craziness. So online is much better. For those of you that don't know Nichole has been working in commercial real estate for over 25 years, has had amazing success. I think I was just talking to somebody else about this. I think that of all the owner operators that I know or have heard of, not corporations, but owner operators, I think she has been by far the most successful and the most generous in terms of giving of her time. She has many thousands of units all across the United States, 11 different states, and it's done some amazing stuff. She's actually on vacation. She's in Scotland right now. So it's 11:30 there, she's telling me. So, and she's a morning person, so she's pretty tired. But I just want to thank you very much, Nichole. I know you're on vacation and I know it's late, but I know that I and everybody else really appreciate you taking the time to hop on today.
Well, I won't say my pleasure, but here I am. So it's hot and humid where you are, and it's chilly and raining where I am. It's in the 50s and low 60s, and it's been raining, and it's going to rain for the next few days. So the good news, it's not hard rains, a lot of it, but I've never really spent. I'm going to be here a couple weeks, and then I'm going to Ireland for a couple of weeks. So I'm enjoying myself quite a bit. So
Nice.
all right. So today, what we're going to talk about is when we go to get loans from the more traditional lenders. They typically have criteria that the underwriters use. And so I'm sure most of you know that even if you go to kind of a local lender or a larger lender, the decision making for whether they're going to lend you the money or not is typically done by an underwriting department. And in general, the underwriting departments are going to be using the same criteria. Now, this is what we use for commercial, but if you're going to be buying a income producing property in residential, it's going to look a lot the same. And so we're just kind of run through these. There's 7 general criteria area. And some of them are weighted heavier than others. And this one, the first one, is really probably weighted more heavy than most of the others. And so it's the quality of your buyer. It used to be that basically what was paid attention to was the income of the property and the property itself, whether it was, according to people, whether it was a good deal or not to lend on. And that's still one of them, but it has been surpassed, I think, by the borrower, the quality of the borrower. And here are the things that they're generally going to look at. So they're going to look at your experience. And when experience is, they're looking for not just that you have other commercial multifamily properties, but how long have you been at it? How much have you got? They are going to look at your credit score, but they're really not paying a lot of attention to your credit score. It's more to make sure that bills are being paid. The truth of the matter is a lot of us who have a lot of commercial real estate and a lot of loans don't have great credit scores. So they're generally in the good range, but they're not up in the 750, 800 range. but they are going to look at your financial statement. And that's pretty much where you are, they're looking at that. That shows up pretty much in your net worth and your liquidity. And so you can mark that one as financial statement as much as anything. If I would tell all of you, if you do not have a current financial statement, you need to do one. It is the minute you start talking about income producing properties and any type of a loan that's a commercial type of loan for an income producing property, you're moving away from your credit score to a financial statement. They are going to do background checks. Some of the background checks are a little bit different. I mean, they're not going to be, if you are a felon, they're gonna have problems. But a lot of other kinds of things don't matter. But what does matter is if you gotten yourself in trouble from the Securities and Exchange Commission, for fraud, for any of the financial types of problems. Obviously, if you've had a bankruptcy, that's also going to show up in your credit score and your credit rating. In the last few years, they're more going to be paying attention to business than they are personal, but they're going to be looking at that. And then the last one, it's kind of a, they are going to look at how far you are from where the property is, but that can be overcome. That last one can be overcome by having property management companies and stuff who are managing your property. So that's borrower quality. The second thing is the income of the property. And that is basically the net operating income. And if you remember, if we've been on these before, that the value of the property is really a reflection of the net operating income. And so they are going to be looking at the net operating income, but in relation to the purchase price. So what they're really looking at is, in one way or another, is the cap rate, the capitalization rate. And they look at that in relation to your to the cost of money and other kinds of financial things. So the net operating income needs to be enough to cover the mortgage plus some. And that's where the next one comes in, the debt service coverage ratio. And you're going to see that as the debt service coverage ratio. You also see it as DCR, which is the debt coverage ratio. And that basically means you take your NOI and you divide that by the mortgage and the interest on the mortgage. So basically your payment. And what they want to see is what's left over, how much is left over after you've paid that. And so if you were to have a DCR of 1, what that means is that your net operating income is exactly the same as your mortgage and the interest on the mortgage. So what they're really looking to see is that you have 25 to 30% over once you've paid the mortgage, so that you have some buffer there. Used to be 1.2, 1.25, but it is moving up. They're going to look at concessions. And concessions are basically what you're having to do to get your properties, your units rented. For quite a while, there weren't any concessions. They're starting to creep back, and that's a reflection of where we are in the market cycle. So there are vacant units. Rents have gone up so much that people are having hard time qualifying for those units, and so people are starting to do concession. So the concessions you typically see are like a $99 special move-in, or rent now and your third month is free. So you're giving something away to get people to move into. They're also going to look at the T12. And if you remember what the T12 is, it is the last 12 months in a running thing, in a running month by month, on how the property's doing. So they want to see the last 12 months. So if we're looking now, the last full month that we had was June. So it would be June and every month back for 12 months. So it'd be June of 23 backed up to July of 22. And they're looking to see if it is getting, if the property's getting better, if it's getting worse, if it's staying the same. But they're going to want to see how it has been performing over the last year. And then they look for profit and loss statements. So the rest of the, the statement of cash flow. So your financials basically. And they're going to want a current rent roll. And on that rent roll, they're going to be looking at how many units you have, how many are rented, and if you have any bad debt. So if there's people who are still in some of your units that are not paying rent. So the vacant units are physical vacancy, and the people not paying rent or are getting concessions are going to be considered economic vacancy. So you put them together and you really go from what the property could be making to what it is. And so those are things that they really look at related to your financials. We're going to run through these and then we'll come back and answer any questions you have. So then they're going to look at the location. And the things that they look at there are, this is pretty self-explanatory. The size of the market, large, medium, or small markets. The large and median markets are more favored of the big banks, the big lenders. The tertiary markets, you're going to have better luck finding lenders in the small local or regional banks, credit unions, savings and loans, those kinds of things. They're going to be looking at the quality of the neighborhood and crime reports. So they really want to see, this is getting at, have you got an A property, a B, a C, or a D property? Now, there's a lot of lenders that aren't going to lend on properties where the neighborhood is bad and or there is high crime. So those of you who are in and around Baltimore probably know that there's certain parts of Baltimore, that is Baltimore City, that it is very difficult to get a traditional loan on. And it basically is a combination of the quality of the neighborhood and the crime in the area. So those are the locations that they're paying attention to. Number 4 is occupancy. This one kind of is, in a lot of ways, this one is a go, no go. So anything property that is less than 85% occupied, and that occupancy is a combination of both physical and economic vacancy. So if you have a combination of those that puts your occupancy at 80%, say, or less, 80, 83, 82%, it's going to be considered a distressed property. And some of your better or lenders that are going to give you better deals are not going to lend on those properties. And that's bad and that's good, because if you can't really find lenders who will lend on those, it drives more likely that you will find owners willing to finance it for a short period of time while you get it turned around. If you have a property that has a problem with vacancy, you need to figure out why, because if somebody has not been able to fix that problem and they're trying to sell it, you need to make sure when you're doing your due diligence that you know what the issue is and that you can solve that. All of these on this occupancy tend to be focusing on those things that make the property distressed in one way, shape, or form. So the overall condition of the property, infrastructure, if you got roofs that need fixed, if you have wet basements, if you have um, other kinds of things that are problem, you have like say you have balconies that need to be redone because they're unstable, or fire escapes, or whatever, that the condition of the property is going to need some capital investment in it. And then the other thing also goes along with the same kind of thing, which is the has to do with the distress, which is the number of down units. Down units meaning that even if you had somebody who wanted to rent, they're not rentable. They need some significant work on them. And so if you look at these, all of these kinds of these four kind of areas are focused on the on distressed things that would make a property be determined to be distressed. If you have a property that's generally distressed, most traditional lenders are going to pass on it pretty quick. There are lenders who will lend on if you go in to buy and part of your plan is to do a repositioning / rehab, and then do and stabilize it and then move into another loan, those they may do, but that's a combination, if you will, of a construction loan followed by a more traditional loan, so bridge loans type of things. In the commercial world, you don't have typically a hard money loan followed by you refinance it. They typically are two phases, one with the higher interest rate, and once it gets to a certain stability, then it moves into a more traditional loan. So those are possibilities. The other is getting some owner financing for a time so that you can get this property turned around. But you need to know what you're dealing with before you go in to more traditional lenders and have a plan for what you're going to do about that. Number 5 is the quality of the tenant. Now this more, the first one really is more related to office and retail space, industrial space, where you have businesses renting this space. And if the businesses don't have good credit ratings, or they don't look like they're very well capitalized, that's going to impact, because they could go down, and now you are going to have play heck trying to get to collect rent from them. The other one, bad debt, we talked about that up there a little bit earlier. But this is if you have a property where there's a lot of bad debt, a lot of times that tends to point to just there hasn't been great management of the property, because you shouldn't have a lot of bad debt, truth be told. Now, that was not true during COVID, because there was a moratorium on being able to evict. But there generally isn't a good, solid reason to have a lot of bad debt on the property. All right, lease quality. So these last 3 that we're talking about are not really, they kind of fill in the cracks and the crevices. They are not leading indicators that are going to nix a loan. But when things are, they help to fill in the overall picture. So when you go to buy, one of the things that that some lenders are going to want, I won't say all, because I haven't run into that in all the lenders that I've worked with, but they're going to prefer you to have leases, to actually have leases, as opposed to having people on month to month. And their thinking is more referring back to commercial loans or commercial tenants, where you can enforce judges and kind of the legal system will hold commercial tenants to contracts, to longer term leases. In the residential, and that includes the multifamily and manufactured housing industries, most judges are not going to hold tenants to a long-term lease. And so just knowing that going in. So, but when you're looking to buy, one of the things that helps you is to know what % of your tenants are on leases, 1-year leases, and how many are on month to month. So it's the same thing when you're looking at office and retail. What is your tenant role? What is the overall risk of that tenant? And their ability to continue with their lease. Okay, and the last item is basically the property, quality and condition of the property. And that's what type of property. Is it A, B, C, or D kind of property? Is there a lot of deferred maintenance? And what kind of improvements have been made over the past 5 years to make sure that the property is up to date? Now, I will tell you, over the last couple of years, as interest rates have gone up, inflation has gone up, those kinds of things, lenders are getting pickier and more skittish about making loans. So, and that's a lot of that's just because there's so much uncertainty in the market right now. So all of the things that 3 or 4 years ago didn't impact so much, as interest rates have gone up, they are people are paying more attention to these items now than they used to. I don't know if that's going to continue as we start to see a lot of these loans, that almost all commercial loans, I'm sure you've heard me talk about this before, are on balloon payments. So they may have an amortization of 20 to 25 years, but they're going to balloon out in 5, and then you have to go back through to get totally refinanced and go through underwriting again. So there are lenders are getting skittish about the amount of what they see coming down the road fairly quickly, which is a lot of these loans that were, when people bought them at a 4 or 5 or 6 cap rate, and you look now and the interest rate when they go to refinance is going to be 8.5, 9, something like that. They're skittish about picking up new loans. All right, so those are the things I wanted to talk about. If you want to know more, this is the same slide we've used all these times. There is that first bullet there is, if you want to know more about what we do and our what all is in our classes, you can go look at that multifamily webinar at the Passive Wealth webinar. Our website is passivecashflowforlife.com. And if you have a question for any of us, you can send it to support@passivecashflowforlife.com. And we always post, not we, James, always post these Teaching Tuesdays up on our YouTube channel, generally Thursday or Friday. And if you go to that channel, you should be able to see all of our Teaching Tuesdays and under a same playlist. Every Tuesday we do these Teaching Tuesdays, and at the same time at 6:30, and then at 7:30, it's our partners in the residential world that are going to talk about a residential topic. So that's kind of what I want to talk, and I'm going to turn it back over to James. I'm going to stop sharing because he wanted to show you a little bit about our website real quick, and then we'll take some questions.
Yeah, let me just, oops, I was putting something in here. There's a couple of things I put actually into the chat. And actually, you want me to do this now and then do the questions? Is that right, Nichole?
I don't care what do you think is the better way?
I don't know. Let me just pull it up real quick and I'll share and we shall see. All right, so share.
I'm kind of brain dead at the moment, so.
Oh, you sound tired. All right, so can everybody see my screen? Is that a yes or no? Thumbs up?
Yeah, we can see it. Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Looks good.
Yes.
So so the website has a ton of stuff on it. All right, so this is actually inside the student part of the website. So you've got all your tabs and stuff like that over here, but I guess what I just wanted to show you is one of the things that we've had some really good feedback on is that we cover everything. So you're not felt like, okay, I know how to do acquisitions, which is kind of the sexy part, but how do I do property management? How do I run my business? How do I do due diligence? Or I know how to do property management, but I didn't really ever learn how to keep my business running for the next 50 years or whatever it is. So this is a little bit of what's in here. So getting ready to invest, finding your market and your teams, starting with small properties if you want to, and then funding, obviously a little bit about what we're talking about today. If you want to syndicate, if you want to look for people to partner with, different ways to finance deals, both normal and creative, which we've done several of, and then how to analyze your deals, right? I mean, this is a numbers, not game, but I guess it's all numbers. That's one of the things I like more about multifamily for me, is that it's all numbers. I don't care how pretty the property is or how ugly it is or what I think it needs or whatever it is. If the numbers don't make sense, I can walk away and know that I can do so in good conscience because I know that I did the numbers and I won't be able to kick myself later going, gee, I wonder if I should have done this or that, because the numbers don't lie at the end of the day, right? So analyzing deals, we've got a spreadsheet in there as well to do that. Different exits that you can have, just like in residential real estate, you know, you want to have your exit in place or your options in place when you're buying the property, not waiting till the end, kind of seeing what happens. This is the electronic analysis. Why we buy what we buy. We specialize in apartment buildings, self-storage, and mobile home parks. And this tells you why we do it and why we think, anyway, it's kind of the best. I mean, we've had people that have done office space for a long time and obviously are now, sadly, bearing the brunt of what's going on with the economy. Yes, commercial, if you will, kind of like retail and stuff like that, we don't really get into. But these seem to be the most recession resistant and the most people will always need a place to live and store their stuff, right? So that's kind of why we're there. And then how to make offers, right? There's different ways that you can make offers. There are different ways you can write up LOIs. Again, creative buying, can't talk, I'm tired too. Creative buying strategies, and then due diligence. You want to make sure that the deal that you're looking at is actually the deal you're going to buy, because sometimes the two don't match. And that's what due diligence is for, to make sure that you're getting what you're paying for. How to rehab, and then closing on a property, bunch of stuff on property management. I think there's 4 huge modules on that, and then long-term 5 huge modules on that, and then running your property as a business, and then buying commercial notes, foreclosures, and short sales kind of as a bonus. So I just wanted to share that with you. If you guys want to go there, it's passivecashflowforlife.com. I would encourage you to actually go to the stop sharing. go to the free webinar because we talk about a couple of different things on there. And you get a little bit of a discount on the program when you actually go there. So it's only about an hour and a half and you can really learn a lot of really good stuff. So I would encourage you to do that if you have an interest. And Nichole, there were a couple of questions that I answered, but you want to take them and give your answer to them?
Well, sure, you can put the what are the questions, and then we'll open it to other people to ask questions.
Okay, so someone asked, I guess when you were talking about concessions, are these past concessions or future concessions when you're analyzing a deal?
This is what, when you take a deal to a lender to try and get a loan, they're going to send it to underwriting. And one of the things underwriters look at is the number of concessions you have. So it's not, it's really what they're looking at. And so we'd prefer to have few concessions as opposed to a lot. Is that basically what you said?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that you need to look at the T12 and see the trend line in terms of how much concessions they're giving away. And then chances are with the market the way it is, those concessions are going to keep going up. So kind of do that as part of your underwriting. The other question was, what are some of the main reasons why a property would be occupied only at 85%?
A lot of it is management isn't doing its job, so they're not marketing. Now, remember, this is a combination of both physical and economic vacancy. So people aren't doing what they should be doing in collections, so they have bad debt. You may have units that are in bad shape that need work and the work hasn't been done, so nobody wants to lend, nobody wants to rent. Can be that the property doesn't have a good reputation for whatever reason, and there's problems with neighbors, there's problems with drugs, those kinds of things. So it can be any number of things, and generally it's not just one thing, it's a mix. And a lot of it really boils down to problems with management in one way, shape, or form, that people weren't keeping up with things. The one thing you can't fix is if you have a property that has problems with drugs, you can turn that around. But if you have a neighborhood that has gangs and drugs, you can't turn that around. So if it's just the property, you can probably do something to fix that. If it's the neighborhood, it's kind of walk away from it. Now, there are some people who do a lot of who work in those neighborhoods and do great and have figured it out, and I'm not one of them. So I just don't buy in really challenging neighborhoods. What did you say?
A little bit along the same lines. One, maybe your rents are too high for the market. You don't have the same level of amenities or same level
Yeah.
of property. Timely maintenance, I think we've always talked about is probably the number one reason people move out. That, they call you to, I don't know, their water's off or something like that, and you don't show up for 3 days. After a while, they just get tired of it and leave. And I've looked at a lot of I guess, opinions online about different properties, and the ones that only get 2 or 3 stars, that seems to be the main thing. They never fix anything, is what you usually see. Or if you don't screen properly, you're letting people in that you shouldn't let in, they don't pay, and then you end up throwing them out, and you're going through this cycle. So your occupancy goes way down.
Yep. The other thing that can be playing into that is it is the same thing in terms of the so the reason people move that you can control are lack of maintenance. People don't feel safe, and you have neighbors and people around who are not good neighbors. They party a lot. And you don't deal with things like that. So you can't control if somebody buys a house or wants to move to a different area. But you can control those things. And so that's a reason for vacancies too. All right, other people with questions, please jump in here.
And you can just unmute. We've got a small enough crowd that you can do that.
I'm sorry?
I was saying they can just unmute because we've got a small enough crowd that they can do that.
Yep.
Hey, good evening, buddy. That was a lot of information. Definitely a good meeting. I wanted to, like you said, a lot about different properties everywhere, but I'm just curious, right? I'm new, right? I haven't invested in anything. I'm just trying to figure things out. But is there like a website you find these, or you just have to like really search through different places,
Are you talking about finding properties?
like commercial properties, right? Because that's what we
Yeah.
were talking.
A couple of the most common ways are brokers, commercial brokers, different than residential, but you can also find you can buy lists of properties and send letters, or in your area you can get you can drive around and see properties. You can find them from property management companies. A good thing to do is to join an apartment owners association, because they're always going to know people who are wanting to sell or exchange properties. So those are some good ways to do it.
I'm sorry, you said apartment owners association?
Apartment owners association, yep. And you can join that even if you have one or two rentals.
How do I join that specifically?
I'm sorry, say that again.
How do I join that?
You have to look online for apartment associations near me and just see what you come up with. If you know people who are investing or who already own those, you can ask them. But that's a really pretty decent way. It's going to help you with learning a lot.
Yeah, I've currently been doing wholesaling. I started, but I've been doing virtual instead of physical. I currently live in Maryland as well, PG area. So I've been doing most of my wholesales, out of state, but now I now try to do a specific list, because I was doing the list of Zillow, but the Zillow list is not good because now
No, it's not. Zillow, you're probably talking, if you want a list, you're really probably talking about going to a list broker and buying a small list. So, and then you don't need a big list. If you're around, this is, 100, 200 names. And you can, kind of 20 units and less, and somebody who's owned 10 or 15 years. So you can do some searching for those.
And is there any specific list to attack, such as liens and tax on a specific home? Because I got a list, but I don't know which is the.
I'm not sure I'm understanding. James or Jane, can you help me? I'm not sure I'm understanding that. I don't think I'm getting his question.
So I think, Ahmad, are you talking about trying to find wholesaling singles or multifamily?
Both.
Okay, so for singles, you may want to stick around with Jane and Sharon after we're done with this one, because they're the experts in single family. In terms of multifamily, I think that the direction that Nichole gave you is spot on, to find a list broker. And when you go and you filter through, just like you would with single family, filter through to things that you're interested in. So I would like to look at all 20 units and below in PG County with at least 15 years worth of equity. Or, I want this specific neighborhood, or I want only, and I don't think anybody would have it in their own name, but whatever you do for list building for single family, I think that the same would apply in multifamily for the most part, but that's really a question for Jan and Sharon. They might be able to guide you better.
Other questions?
Yes, Jade is asking, is a list broker a person or a program?
A list broker is typically, it's a company that collects all of this information about about multifamily. It collects information about houses in the single family realm, and they are going to have a lot of different criteria, and you're going to go in and you're going to buy that list. And they're going to send it to you, and then you would do letters and stuff. Jane or Sharon, do you have a favorite list broker that you use, or do you use list brokers? Jane or Sharon?
Yeah, hang on 1 second. We were trying to switch computers because Sharon's is on the PowerPoint. What was the question? Just for wholesaling or looking for lists?
Do you have any good list brokers?
No, we're all over the place with just on wholesale things and then finding the properties ourselves. We don't actually use brokers, just independent agents or
Now this
looking
is
for
a
single
list.
properties.
This is a list broker, right? Somebody where
like
you
list source or like that.
yeah, where you can buy a list of properties that fit certain criteria.
Yeah, list source back in the day. Again, we recently, probably since we started in 2016, we used the list, but we haven't
Okay.
yet.
And Jade,
All right. So you can Google, and there's some decent list brokers out there that you can buy. I haven't used any list brokers for a while. I pretty much use commercial brokers that are listing properties. So I don't have any really good current information. If any of the rest of you have any list brokers you use, please let us know.
So I Googled list brokers while we were talking, and I just pasted in the chat an article on how to choose the best mailing list broker. So if you guys want to click on that, I don't know anything about it, so I'm not taking responsibility for it. I was literally just Googling list brokers, and that article came up. I thought it'd be interesting for you guys if you want to cut and paste or just click on it.
All right.
Other questions?
Anybody else? So Jade says, I would like to get into small multifamilies, but my funding is limited. 4 units and less is going to be in the single family realm, as opposed to 5 and more is in the commercial, but 4 or less is still an income producing property. So some of those you can find a partner. You can find a property see if you can find a property that's distressed and get the seller to owner finance to you for a little bit. You can trying to think of some other ways that you can go about that. You can try and raise some private money. What I would not do in a income producing property is to use hard money lenders unless you're planning to rehab it and sell it right away, because you're going to be in it for longer than a year. The other thing you might be able to do is, if you're willing to live in it, is to find one and get a homeowner loan, like an FHA loan, that we only have to put 2 or 3% down. But you have to live in those for a couple of years once you have bought them, to be able to qualify for that. But it's a way to get in. So own 1, rent 3, and then move on to your next one. That's also okay. Next.
No, what you were saying about the FDA loan. So the requirements for that is what specifically? Because I heard about that, but I didn't know the specific requirements.
In commercial, so most FHA is primarily residential.
Okay.
There are some loans for commercial, for multifamily. But if you're looking, I was answering her question, which is 4 units or less. 4 units or less is considered residential. And so there are FHA loans for those that in general, the property has to be in reasonably good shape and it has to be in certain neighborhoods. So it has to qualify. So you're not going to be buying something that needs a lot of work on it. But the other side is you can get into 3 to 5% down, as opposed to most commercial, which is 20% down or something like that. The key is you have to live in it for a while. And then you can rent the other 3 and then find some other properties. Another good way is find a partner, find a find a lender, something like that, who will work with you, JV partners, those kinds of things. But you really need to know your business before you step into that. So commercial is not residential. You really need to know the business. It is buyer beware in this world, as opposed to residential, where there's a lot of consumer protections. So there's a lot of disclosures.
If I could just throw in there, one of the things that you can do if you don't have a lot of funding right now is, you have to bring something to the table for someone to partner with you, right? So you came to me and said, hey, James, I need X amount of dollars. And I said, that's great. I'll fund you. What are you bringing to the table? So I would encourage you guys, whether it's through us or somebody else, whatever, is learn as much as you possibly can, because then you've got something valuable that you can offer to that person with the money to say, listen, you put up the money, I'll do everything else, kind of thing. And a lot of people have started off that way and had great success with it. We actually had a student in terms of house hacking that still has a 12-unit apartment building in Charles Village in Baltimore, who he started off, he bought it at auction. I think it only had 2 rentals, and he's been living in it, house hacking basically, with his wife and 2 kids for like the last 6 or 7 years. And he clears a ton of money off that thing. And that was just a house hack, kind of thing. So either way works. And it's a great way to get started. So sorry I've interrupted, Nichole.
No, that's a good one.
That was a good one. I need to get to that.
And then there's another question in here. You mentioned that the multi-units are safer in this market. Why is that? And is that for mod 5 or more units?
I don't remember saying.
Yeah.
Did I say that that multifamily is safer?
No, I mean, I mentioned that I like multifamily because it's all numbers and numbers don't lie.
Oh, I see what, yeah.
So that might be the answer to that. And then she's asking, are DSCR loans a higher interest rate than conventional loans?
Are what kind, I'm sorry, I'm on the other side of the world, and so I'm having a hard time hearing some of this. There's an echo.
Are DSCR loans a higher interest rate than conventional loans?
What do you mean DSCR? I think when I hear DSCR, I think debt service coverage ratio, which isn't a loan. So what kind of loan are you talking about?
Yeah, I don't know either, because I was thinking the exact same thing. So Jade, if you can expand on that, that would be great.
Can you unmute and just tell us what you're talking about?
So, all right. Hi. I'm in a noisy area, so that's why I've been texting. So I apologize for the noise. But I'm talking about the loans where they just utilize, they don't use your income. They utilize the DSCR ratio and put the loan in your LLC.
Okay. So a while back, that people used to focus mostly on the property itself and the income the property generated. But since the 2007-2008 debacle, it's been more and more, the focus has been on the quality of the buyer and all of these other things we talked about as well. So they still look at the debt service coverage ratio as one of the financial things they look at, as well as the income and the net operating income. But it is only one of the criteria. The other big ones are the experience of the buyer, and the actual property itself. And so in experience, they're looking at what have you owned in the past? What do you currently own? And have you managed the properties, these kind of properties before? And are you, in your experience, is the same type of property? So if you have apartment buildings and you're trying to buy a self-storage, you're not going to get as much credit for experiences if you were buying another apartment building. So the answer is that nobody's just looking at the debt service coverage ratio or the financials on a property anymore. That's what this whole presentation was about. They're looking at the 7 different areas where lenders are really looking. And the first 2 or 3 that we talked about are the ones where they're putting the most emphasis. And so the financials are certainly one of them, but probably the one that weighs the most are the experience of the quality of the buyer anymore. Did that answer that question, Jade?
Not really. The types of loans that I have a property, and the loan I got, it was different from a conventional loan. So I've had a property in the past where they looked at all my financials. But in this property, it was a shorter process because they were looking at what the rental income is versus the debt. And based on the potential of the property, they gave me a loan. And my question was that compared to just your traditional loan, would the interest rate, are the interest rates higher because it's not as focused on your income as the traditional loan is. That was it. But it's okay.
No, how long ago did you get that loan?
At the end of last year. So I had to have the house rented for 6 months. And then from there, because they had they were looking for the ratio and whatnot, I didn't have to bring all my assets up.
Okay, so this was a single family property?
Yes, it was a single family.
Okay. Yeah, that's a little bit of a different kettle of fish. So so it sounds to me like what you may have done, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you found a property and you got a shorter term loan, you got it fixed up, you got it rented, and then you went to refinance it. Is that correct?
Right, correct.
Okay. So that's actually what Sharon and Jane are going to be talking about in the next presentation. It's called the BRRRR method.
Right. Okay.
With 4 R's. So in the commercial or multifamily world, it is, so if you were to buy a 4-unit, and I'm making this up, that had a lot of warts on it, had a lot of problems, and you got those fixed, and it's making more money, and you go in to refinance it, you are not going to, they're still going to be looking at you, but they are going to put more emphasis on the property itself because it's performing now. And so it's just a bit different. Jane or Sharon, have you got anything you can, I know you're going to talk about this, but can you say anything here for Jade real quick?
You guys might be.
Yeah.
Jane or Sharon?
Go ahead. Oh, I didn't hear the question. I'm sorry.
Okay, you guys are obviously doing something else. So you can, Jade, if you stay on, you can ask them in a little bit here, because it's, but it's a different, it's a different scenario. I do not answering the interest rate question. Initially, if you have a property that is distressed in one shape or form, or any of those 7 criterias aren't in really good shape, they may finance it, but the interest rate's going to be higher. If you have a good DCR, you have good financials, you have good experience, the interest rates are going to be somewhat lower, But having said that, rates are still about 2 percentage points above the LIBOR at least. And so most of the time, what you're looking at now is interest rates in the commercial area of 8 to 9%. And I don't think it's a whole lot different in residential. It may be 7.5, something like that, but interest rates are way up, which is causing everybody a lot of headaches. So I'm hoping that, is that a little better, Jade, or did I still miss what you're trying to get at?
Nope, that's good. Thank you so much. That was
Okay.
helpful.
All right. I think we have time for, it's 7:30. So we may have, I'm going to kind of hand this over to, I thank everybody for all your time. And I'm sorry, I was having a hard time hearing some of this today.